Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Krystal, what's on the show today?
Well, we got some new polls coming out of Iowa, just as all the candidates head to the iconic Iowa State Fair. We'll dig into that. And we're also going to ask the question, when do the Biden gaffes, when is this a thing we actually need to talk about?
Well, we're going to talk about it now. All that coming up today on Rising. Happy Friday, everybody. Krystal, what are you taking a look at?
Well, Sagar, we talk a lot about theories of political change on this show. You might even say that it's one of the central themes around here, because it's all well and good to have ideas about how you might change the country, provide health care to its citizens, rebuild the industrialized Midwest, provide basic dignity. But if you don't have an idea about how to actually accomplish these things, you're just basically playing fantasy politics the same way that normal people play fantasy football. Frankly, this is kind of the hang-up I've had with Elizabeth Warren's campaign. Some of the policy ideas are obviously great, but I believe she overestimates her own ability to pull the levers of power and work within the existing institutions as they are currently constructed. But of all the candidates, the one with the absolute worst theory of change has got to be Joe Biden. Take it away, Joe.
Now, some of these same people are saying, Biden just doesn't get it. You can't work with Republicans anymore. That's not the way it works anymore. Well, folks, I'm going to say something outrageous. I know how to make government work. Not because I've talked or tweeted about it, but because I've done it. I've worked across the aisle to reach consensus, to help make government work in the past.
You can count me among those people who's saying Biden just doesn't get it. Forget about a public option or the moonshot for cancer or criminal justice reform. This belief in the grand possibility of bipartisanship is what Biden is running on. And yesterday, he gave us some additional info about just how deep this belief runs. Here's how Jonathan Chait over at New York Magazine put it. Joe Biden, touring Iowa, told reporters in so many words that his plan is to have an ineffectual failed presidency, or, as Biden put it more pithily, ending the filibuster is a very dangerous move. None other than Harry Reid recently called for ditching the filibuster in order to deal with the existential threat of climate change, but not Biden. He still fantasizes about the time when he was able to come together with segregationists to fight desegregation by busing. Keep in mind, the Senate is a profoundly undemocratic institution just to start with. It gives Wyoming and California equal power, even though 68 times more people live in California. This, however, is better than the situation of D.C. and Puerto Rico, where taxpaying citizens have no power at all. And also keep in mind who Biden's partner in this imagined bipartisan comedy would be: Mitch frickin' McConnell. It is no exaggeration to say that this man views his best and highest purpose as weaponizing the undemocratic nature of the Senate in order to hold power for the Republican shrinking minority coalition. Now, I was at Fancy Farm last weekend. That is the Kentucky political event where young Team Mitch supporters choked and groped a cutout of AOC. McConnell's bust-in supporters also erected a graveyard with tombstones that had the names of progressive legislative priorities, Mitch's political opponents, and, wait for it, Merrick Garland. Of course. Garland is the Obama Supreme Court nominee that McConnell blocked from even being considered against all precedent in history. This act, maybe more than any other, is what McConnell actually views as his proudest achievement. He calls himself the Grim Reaper for his cherished role in blocking anything and everything that Democrats want to do. And of course, when Biden's bestie Barack Obama was in the White House, McConnell famously proclaimed that the GOP's top priority wasn't to help pull the nation out of financial tailspin or make sure that our citizens have health care. Nope, it was to defeat Obama. And honestly, Mitch is smart to weaponize every undemocratic lever and use every trick in the book in the service of maintaining power. As demographics shift in the U.S. and the Republican Party becomes increasingly toxic to the rising electorate, the only possible play for them is to rig the rules to be as undemocratic as possible. That is literally the central project in which the GOP is engaged, and they're damn good at it. They don't want to work with you, Joe. They want to use every tool, fair and unfair, to keep power for the shrinking minority constituency that their party represents. There is one thing that terrifies me more than a second Trump term, maybe two things, a Don Jr. term. But aside from that, it's an impotent Democratic administration that fails to address any of the problems that brought us Trump, paving the way for someone just as abhorrent as Trump, but much more effective. Biden keeps providing us with more and more evidence that he fundamentally does not understand the battlefield as it exists today and will keep the Democratic Party feeble. And to me, Sagar, this is the central question for all of the Democratic candidates. How are you actually going to change the country and address the conditions that brought us Trump? You can't just beat him. You also have to address those underlying conditions, and I think Biden is fundamentally unfit there.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is that there's a similar feeling amongst Republicans, which is that so much of being a Republican or a centrist Republican these days is basically just genuflecting to the media and to the press and not actually doing any of the things that the people who elected you to do. Fundamentally, what that is an indictment by both bases of the party of the theory that you can work with the other side in order to get these types of things done. That's why people support what Mitch McConnell did. It's not necessarily, I mean, the undemocratic thing, we can argue about that later. But really what it is like a feeling that you're not actually going to fight to get these things done. And a fight is actually what it entails. If you look at some of Joe Biden's heroes like Lyndon B. Johnson, you think it was easy to pass civil rights? There was like an 81-day filibuster.
Right.
And he masterfully maneuvered the Southern Democrats into having, he was like, they can filibuster all the way. He's like, I don't care, because he passed everything else he wanted to pass before that and actually got it done. Color me skeptical that Joe Biden is as much of a legislative genius as Lyndon Johnson.
Fair.
Yeah.